Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this year's Santa Monica State of the City Summit, The Road to Recovery. This is our 11th year presenting this program and now our first year on a virtual platform. Before we get started, I would like to thank our title sponsors, Boston Properties, UCLA Health, Providence St. John's, Santa Monica Travel and Tourism, GoodRx, and the Water Garden, and all the additional sponsors who made it possible to invite everyone as our guest tonight. The Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the City of Santa Monica, is hosting tonight's program, and I would like to introduce our featured speakers. Congressman Ted Lieu, California District 33, will discuss recovery at the national level. Mayor Sue Himmelrich will present a look into the future and how we are moving forward towards recovery. Interim City Manager Lane Dilg will present the current state of our city and its impact on the community. I would also like to recognize City Council members that are attending tonight. Kristen McCowan, Kevin McEwen, Christine Parra, Phil Brock, and Gleam Davis. Let me also give a sincere welcome to the first responders, the essential workers, and special guests that are joining us. So at the Chamber, we know how important businesses are to a community and the role they play in helping to support everyone physically and, yes, emotionally and mentally. We love our Santa Monica businesses, both big and small. Neighborhood businesses thrive alongside larger companies whose employees utilize local serving facilities such as restaurants, dry cleaners, retail, salons, fitness studios, and more. As much as we appreciate big business, we also know that small businesses are the heart of the Chamber and the backbone of any city. These are the mom and pop stores, the family stores that have been passed from generation to generation. They are the sidewalk sweepers and the window cleaners, the independent owners of storefront businesses whose livelihoods depend on every transaction. The last 12 months have been unprecedented in modern business history. We've had a number of business closures, limited operations, and staff reductions. The Chamber has also felt the effects. To date, we know over 130 small businesses that have permanently closed. Our hope is that we can work together to prevent more closures and move towards a brighter future. One of the things that we're truly missing now is a sense of togetherness. With the lack of foot traffic and in-person connections at small businesses and restaurants, meeting friends at the dog park, or taking the time to talk at Bob's Market, at Benny's Tacos, or in the lobby of the Fairmont. As a community, we must continue to find ways to overcome the negative aspects of the recent civil unrest and ongoing pandemic. Following the looting in May, the Chamber created the Small Business Relief Fund to help raise money to assist businesses impacted by these activities. We also recognized that we needed to have conversation about equity and diversity in our community. So the Chamber moved forward in partnership with the Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber and produced a panel program called Santa Monica Black Leadership, a Business Community Conversation. The Chamber also partnered with Santa Monica College for the fall semester 2020 to create the Next Gen Mentorship Program for minority youth. We will be implementing it again in the spring semester. As to the coronavirus, the city is very fortunate to have world-renowned healthcare in the community as well as we battle COVID-19, including hospitals that are at the forefront of research and providing first-rate healthcare to our residents and employees. We must continue to support these hospitals, and it's incredibly important to recognize the healthcare workers that put their lives on the line each day. In September, the Chamber produced the New Hero Celebration to thank our hospital workers, our educators, and our fire and police personnel. Tonight's theme is the road to recovery. And that path has brought us to several assistant programs that have been available to the business community, including at the federal and state levels and at home with a Buy Local Santa Monica campaign, among others. By the way, have you voted yet for your most loved Santa Monica business of 2021? These businesses need our love and support now more than ever. At the Chamber, we are working with our members and partners to create crucial business services and to host programs to help our businesses to be resilient, sustainable, and to adapt and recraft their skills. Next step in our road to recovery will focus on the recently created small business strike teams to help our City Council members understand the most pressing issues for our businesses and to help inform the city's Economic Recovery Task Force efforts, particularly in the areas of permitting and easing the process and costs associated with doing business in Santa Monica. We must also look towards the future in spite of the known and the unknown, with programs such as Santa Monica Chamber's Young Professional Leadership Program to help prepare young leaders to address today's problems and tomorrow's issues. The Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce goal is to continue to provide resources and support to help businesses survive and reach their destination on the road of recovery. Now, please join me in watching this brief video spotlighting the businesses that have participated in the Santa Monica Shines COVID-19 Assurance Program and earned their Santa Monica Shines Assurance Seal to display their commitment to public safety during the ongoing corona pandemic.
We are so happy to be a part of the Santa Monica Shines Assurance Program because it helps guide us and it helps us lead our clients into making sure we're doing the safest and cleanest things that we can do.
Today we have our every other week COVID test for the staff. Our primary concern is making sure our staff feel safe, because if they feel safe, they're going to make you feel safe.
It's the most beneficial thing that you can do for your business at the moment, to communicate in a very precise way to your client that you care about them and you care about your employees during this very difficult time for everyone.
With the community in mind, like health and wellness is a part of everything that we do. So we did just complete the Santa Monica Shines program, making sure we have all of the health and safety precautions in place for COVID to make sure that everybody's comfortable with working out here as well.
And that's really important to us, that people still feel like they're able to come to this safe space and enjoy their time here with us.
Thank you to all those businesses that have joined and received their seals. I hope you'll also take advantage of this wonderful program. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our interim city manager. As Santa Monica's interim city manager, Dilg has led the city of Santa Monica through the historic challenges of the COVID-19 public health emergency and has built a strong foundation for recovery. Before moving to Santa Monica with her family and serving as her city attorney, Lane's career in public service included top legal positions at UCLA and UCLA Health, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the United States government. She has litigated for the ACLU and in private practice. At every stage of her education and career, Lane has focused on the questions of how communities best live and thrive together. Please help me give a big warm welcome to the virtual podium, Lane Dilg.
Thank you, Laurel, and good evening, Santa Monica. It's a privilege to have the chance to address you tonight. And it's wonderful to be joining you from your new downtown Fire Station 1. This state-of-the-art sustainable facility was designed pre-COVID, but completed during the pandemic. The station is home to essential team members who have served this community during the pandemic, and it is designed to ensure that vital emergency services will continue no matter what major disaster may come. Fire Station 1 is, of course, a working station. So if your fire department receives a call or deploys while I'm talking with you, we are along for the ride. Santa Monica, each year we come together for this State of the City event to talk about where we have been as a community and where we are going. Last year, we gathered in person amidst a thriving economic, civic, and social life. A happy people in a happy place. Exactly 1 month later, we began closing facilities, canceling events, and providing guidance about the COVID-19 public health emergency. Together, we were forced to shutter our shared civic life and begin a new one largely at home. Since that time, this virus has tested us in every possible way. We have remained a fortunate people in a fortunate place, but we have been forced to confront historic challenges as a nation and as a local community. Tonight, I want to send our immeasurable gratitude to our local health and mental health care providers for your work over the last long 11 months. Your courage gave others the gift of life, and we are forever grateful. I also want to thank the members of our Emergency Operations Center and local community leaders who have worked together to keep our community informed about public health matters, to secure and distribute personal protective equipment, and to ensure compliance with ever-changing state and county public health orders. In Santa Monica, we are fortunate to have had among the very lowest COVID-19 rates in all of Los Angeles County. But tonight, we mourn the 135 members of our community whom we have lost. To all of you who have lost family members or beloved friends to this virus, we hold you with us in your grief, and we long for the moment when we can comfort and embrace you in person. In the midst of this toll, our country also experienced an economic downturn more crippling than any since the Great Depression. While we in Santa Monica remain blessed in our ability to care for one another, more than 7,000 of our residents have been unemployed. 72% of our businesses report struggling to cover expenses. And we have opened our new Virginia Avenue Park food pantry to support some 200 households in Santa Monica newly facing food insecurity. As our economy faces the prospect of a recovery in which the fortunate recover more rapidly than the vulnerable, addressing homelessness, unemployment, and food insecurity remain urgent priorities for us all. While our local strategies in addressing homelessness have shown positive results in the past, your City Council has voiced with clarity that we must join regional and national partners to search urgently for ways to do more, to house the unsheltered, to provide behavioral and mental health care to those in need, and to ensure that our public spaces are safe, clean, and healthy for all in our community to enjoy. Homelessness has been exposed in the pandemic like never before as a statewide crisis that will impact every aspect of our local recovery. In Santa Monica, we have continued to lead the way in keeping the approximately 70% of our community members who are renters in their homes. We were one of the first cities in the nation to implement emergency measures to stop evictions based on COVID-19 income loss. We have provided more than 600 families with direct rental assistance and 145 senior households with cash-based assistance through our Preserving Our Diversity program. And 95 new affordable apartments have opened in Santa Monica since we last gathered. But while we maintain the ingenuity and dedication that allows us to craft new policies and programs, the economic impacts of COVID-19 have badly battered our city budget. Our place on the Pacific has long allowed us to welcome visitors, supporting and enhancing a residential life characterized by first-class city services and unparalleled natural beauty. But in the pandemic, the shuttering of travel and economic life threatened to leave gaping holes in a city budget that has benefited from tourism, sales tax, and parking-based revenues, and relied less on property taxes due to California's tax structure. And despite Congressman Lieu's tireless personal efforts, federal aid in 2020 effectively left out cities with small populations like ours, offering no meaningful aid to cover revenue gaps. Today, I am pleased to say that our budget is balanced, our fiscal health is intact, and we retain our rare AAA bond rating. But this financial security and stability came at a painful cost. The city government was forced to reduce expenditures by nearly 25% for this fiscal year, and to reduce the city staff by almost 300 full-time positions. During the pandemic, our city team has faced significant hardships: COVID exposure, pay cuts, lost colleagues, reduced staffing, lack of childcare, and personal sickness and loss. It was a very hard year. But this city is blessed by a team with personal and professional resilience and pride in public service that I will remain humbled and changed by forever. As just a few examples, your farmers market has been one of the few to operate for farmers, restaurants, and residents at every stage of the pandemic. Your library staff has offered levity and learning to nearly 13,000 patrons through ever-expanding curbside service at 3 locations. Your community services department has offered outdoor recreation and childcare at almost every stage that it was permitted. Your Big Blue Bus team provided 287 days of fare-free public transit, transporting a general ridership of 67% essential workers each day in the pandemic. Your maintenance team adapted to rapidly changing patterns of people utilizing our beach and public spaces to safely escape the confines of home. Your building inspectors conducted 15,000 in-person and virtual inspections to support businesses, housing production, and ultimately our recovery. Your Water Resources Division replaced over 17,000 feet of pipelines and delivered nearly 3.5 billion gallons of high-quality drinking water. And your fire department, in addition to providing continuous fire and EMT services at home, deployed personnel to fight 17 wildfires during the worst fire season in California's history. Your city government strives each day to live up to the highest standards of community health, safety, and well-being. In Santa Monica, we also experienced this year one of the hardest days in our local history. On May 31st, a day when our community longed to raise voices, decrying racism and calling for justice for George Floyd and far too many others, lawlessness took hold. Our local businesses suffered tremendous property loss, and many of you were in your homes or businesses fearful and awaiting police response. The challenges were immense, and not only in Santa Monica, but we should have been better prepared, and we should have communicated with you better that day and in the days that followed. Since May 31st, we have gone to great lengths to identify and respond to any and all areas needing improvement. This has included shoring up police department leadership, enhancing intelligence, mobile field force, and incident command operations, engaging in hard conversations with regional partners and mutual aid networks, and significantly enhancing citywide civil unrest, emergency response, planning, and implementation. As a city government, we must learn everything there is to learn from the events of May 31st in order to prevent anything like that from happening again. For that reason, we look forward to the OIR group delivering a comprehensive, independent accounting of the event to the community in April, as directed by the City Council. Despite the blow of May 31st, Part 1 crimes in Santa Monica decreased by 5.5% in 2020. This 5.5% decrease builds on a 16% decrease the prior year and represents crime levels nearing lows in 2015. The decrease reflects the public health shutdowns, but also the spike in non-residential burglaries on May 31st and a 272% increase in thefts of catalytic converters, a national crime trend that the Santa Monica Police Department has engaged patrols to address locally. To our police officers and firefighters, motor coach operators, water and resource recycling and recovery workers, child care providers, and our entire city team, we have learned this year what it means to be essential. A community can live together and thrive only with the services you provide. We are fortunate and we are grateful. But even as we've responded to the pandemic and stabilized our community and economy, we have also always looked ahead to crafting together our recovery and bright future. We have created new opportunities to enjoy Santa Monica's outdoor space by redesigning Main Street, creating the new Ocean Avenue Boardwalk, expanding outdoor dining on the 3rd Street Promenade, and partnering with more than 300 local businesses across the city to create safe outdoor spaces, not only for dining, but also for personal care, personal health, and fitness everywhere from parking lots to the pier. True to our history, art will play a key role in our recovery. Our New Deal-inspired Art of Recovery program provides financial support to local artists as they support community connectedness and restorative justice by using our physical space as a canvas to beautify our city. These efforts to invite residents and visitors alike to enjoy our beloved outdoor space merely begin our broader recovery for all going forward. I'm proud to announce tonight our new SAMO Small Business Recovery Grants Program, a partnership with the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce Foundation that supplements federal, state, and county efforts to bring our beloved smallest and hardest hit local businesses through this crisis. We invite any person or business that is able to contribute to go to our We Are Santa Monica Fund website to help us reach our goal of supporting up to 1,000 local businesses. A zero emissions delivery zone pilot with the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator is turning 1 square mile of our downtown and Main Street into a test bed for how to deliver parcels and food with no carbon impact. And in September, the City Council approved redevelopment of the historic Miramar Hotel following a decade-long community engagement process, and in time for the redesigned hotel at the foot of the 3rd Street Promenade to play a key role in the city's overall economic recovery. This winter, we teamed up with Downtown Santa Monica as they initiated their Stabilization and Economic Vitality Project to restore and build upon the Promenade's legacy as a dynamic and inclusive city center. And we hope you will join our Love Letters to Santa Monica project as we continue to work to ensure that as our recovery continues, it comes from and speaks of and to us, that our commercial districts and public spaces reflect, draw in, and bring out the talent, compassion, and dedication so unique in Santa Monica's neighborhoods and those who reside within them. We also look forward to inviting the community into new spaces and places completed during the pandemic. These include the expanded North Beach Trail, a widening of our beloved beach trail and oceanfront walk pedestrian path, the beginning of 18 new miles of protected bike lanes with a new 2-way cycle track on Ocean Avenue and a protected bike lane on Broadway, our new Fire Station 1, the still in progress Sustainable Water Infrastructure Project, a finishing element of the Clean Beaches Initiative that will generate more than 1,500 acre feet of new water each year as Santa Monica moves away from imported water and toward a sustainable and resilient water system for our city. City Hall East, a water self-sufficient, carbon neutral, zero waste, and energy independent living building that eliminates all city leases and exemplifies the key role that building and construction play in combating climate change. The new Early Childhood Lab School, a unique partnership with Santa Monica College that will provide first-class early education to working families while allowing new teachers to train under the guidance of Santa Monica's exceptional early childhood education professionals. And historic Belmar Park, Santa Monica's newest 3.5-acre open park space, which completes years of civic engagement by our parks community and commemorates a site that was home to a thriving African American community until the 1950s. We hope you will join us at 3 p.m. this Sunday for the virtual opening of this new space for Santa Monica. These large projects reflect our thriving economy of the past and generate hope to propel us forward to our future. But now we must also go back to basics to make cost-effective improvements to the way you connect, communicate, and build trust with your city government. We look forward to launching a new 311 system at the end of March to make sure that you have easy access and a friendly partner when you need information or help navigating your local government. Our enhanced and improved website, santamonica.gov, offers an easier and more intuitive interface for you to find information about the services on which you rely. A council review beginning in April of the boards and commissions structure will examine how we can best draw on our residents to craft our government together. And our new We Are Santa Monica Fund has raised more than $1 million for community efforts as neighbors have reached out to help one another. Santa Monica, your recovery will be led by the most diverse city council in the city's history. I hope you will continue to energetically embrace the call to advance racial equity and inclusion in our community. This work is hard. It requires introspection, painful reflection, and unflinching determination. I want to thank all those who participated in the Public Safety Reform Advisory Committee for their tireless work contributing to the City Council's creation of Santa Monica's first citizen body dedicated to regular engagement with and oversight of the police department. I want to thank members of the Black Agenda Group, whose new Santa Monica Black Lives Association will promote the well-being of Black Santa Monicans and help to build a more equitable and just community. I want to thank the Recreation and Parks Commission and African American community leaders whose advocacy led to the historic Belmar Park and its trademark Belmar History Plus Art project. And I want to thank the city staff members who are now serving as equity and inclusion officers in every single city department to move us forward to our more equitable future. As many of you know, my family will be leaving Santa Monica in the coming months for public service elsewhere. I want to take this moment to send my deep thanks to my husband and son for supporting me in supporting the city. In my family, public service is a shared vocation. And my partner and I are deeply proud over the almost 10 years that we have lived in Santa Monica to have contributed to and borne witness to some of the very best in public life. UCLA, the then Attorney General of the state of California, the LA 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and the bright future of the city of Santa Monica. In a community, it is always our people, we ourselves, who chart and determine our collective destiny. Santa Monica, your neighborhoods overflow with unrivaled passion and talent. From community advocacy to early education, to local youth services, to health and mental health care, to world-class culinary innovation in small-scale local restaurants, to arts and architecture, surfing and skating, gardening, sustainability, and technological innovation. This thriving community lives and breathes beside the expansive surf of the Pacific and nightly displays of some of the most spectacular sunsets in the world. Our recovery is certain, but it must be crafted and invested in together. To each and every one of you who wakes up thinking about how we can create Santa Monica's bright future together, it has been my immense privilege to serve this community with you. I want to turn your attention now to a video highlighting our essential local workers across the city team, our teachers, and our healthcare workers. After the video, Chamber of Commerce Board Chair Becky Warren will introduce your Mayor, Sue Himmelrich, whose love for this city and passion for bringing you together makes her not just a necessary, but your natural leader in this moment.
"2020 was an unexpected tough year, but my colleagues and I got essential workers and the community to their destination safely. From all of us at Big Blue Bus, we look forward to recovering together. Let's get back on board in 2021. Let's do this, Santa Monica!"
My name is Jessica Gutierrez. I teach chemistry and physics at Samo High. I'm also the mom of 2 kids under the age of 5. So believe me when I say I know 2020 has been a rough year, but myself and my colleagues have been working really hard to get your kids excited about learning and engaged in distance learning, but we're also ready to go back to school and we can't wait to be there safely with them. We're here for you. We're looking forward to recovering and getting back to school.
Good morning, Santa Monica. My name is Jim Brewster. I am a part of the Santa Monica Building Inspection Team. Through these pandemic times, it is devastating to see what has happened to this city. We need recovery. We need it fast. We're doing our part. We have not stopped one day. We're providing virtual inspections, on-site inspections. We've gone paperless. Santa Monica, we're doing our part to keep this wheel rolling. So believe in us. We believe in you. We're passionate. We love you.
From our emergency operations crew, thank you for staying home and staying safe in 2020. We're on the road to recovery.
Thank you again to Santa Monica's essential workers. We appreciate your dedication and sacrifice. My name is Becky Warren, and I am the chair of the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and it is my privilege tonight to introduce our city's mayor, Sue Himmelrich. Mayor Sue Himmelrich joined the Santa Monica City Council in 2014 and was reelected in 2018 before serving 1 year on the Planning Commission. A 28-year resident, Mayor Himmelrich is passionate about affordable housing, combining strong fiscal policy with progressive and passionate social policies, and protecting vulnerable community members. As special counsel for the Western Center on Law and Poverty, she fights for those who do not have the means to defend themselves. Mayor Himmelrich lives with her husband, Michael Soloff, and their beloved pets after daughters Hillary and Molly left for college. Everyone, please welcome Mayor Himmelrich.
Good evening, and thank you, Becky, and thank you, Lane. It brings tears to my eyes to hear you talk about leaving. I want to say it's a privilege to be together with all of you, even in this digital format. And as I look across my screen, it both brings home the fact that our reality has changed and how much I hope that we can once again achieve some modicum of normalcy again in the near future. For those of you who don't know me, you should know that there is nothing I love more than a good challenge. This is why I sought this job, and I'm honored to serve as the mayor of Santa Monica for the next 2 years. All of us in Santa Monica and throughout the state, the country, and the world have struggled and suffered over the past year, although admittedly some of us have suffered more than others. We need to recognize this struggle and how it has impacted us and left an imprint on our community. from small business owners, restaurants, and retailers who struggled to stay afloat, to frontline workers who have risked their lives to keep services running, to those who lost jobs and businesses, to renters who simply couldn't pay the rent or had to deplete savings to do so, to homeowners facing foreclosure, to many left to seek out basic necessities like food and shelter, and most tragically, to those who lost loved ones or suffered directly from contracting COVID-19. On top of the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, the re-examination of systemic racism that followed, and the ease with which criminal elements were able to take advantage of May 31st protests to loot and damage our downtown, all expose deep flaws in our city and our nation, for which we both apologize and resolve to address. In short, this past year has been a test of our strength and willingness to survive. We can see our interconnectedness as a community and the important contributions of all of its members. We now need to carry these lessons with us as we welcome what we hope will be a new period of recovery. For my own family, this year has been at best the darkest time, and at worst, the most deadly time of our lives. I personally lost 2 members of my own family. I know I am not alone, and I know others are grieving immensely right now. My almost 90-year-old father died after living a full life. My sweet and ebullient 21-year-old nephew, Charlie, however, took his life after losing hope, despite what I saw as limitless possibilities before him. I want everyone watching to know that life remains worth living. If you are in anguish and need a lifeline, please reach for it. Call the County Crisis Line at 800-854-7771. Or, and I mean this, you can call my cell phone, 310-963-1337. And that is my cell, I answer it. Having struggled with my own mortality in 2004 when I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and then relapsed in 2006, my approach was simple. Put one foot in front of the other, keep my eyes firmly trained on the path to recovery, and pay it forward. While things may never be the same, we are here in 2021 on what seems like the brink of better times. And I'm asking you to lean into this challenge with me to create a more equitable, a more responsive, and a more transparent Santa Monica. When running for council in 2014, I shared that every day when I walk out my door, I think, just another day in paradise. I feel this very same way today, and it's my job, with your help, to see that this is an opportunity to make Santa Monica even better than it was in 2014. We all are asking, what will the next 2 years look like? And if anyone tells you that they have the answer, good luck to them, because the predictions of so-called experts is all over the board. We do know that all indicators tell us that the pandemic has expanded the inequality gap with Black, Brown, and anyone with a limited income most impacted by loss of housing, learning, income, and life. We know that the COVID pandemic brought with it new challenges, particularly for small businesses and workers in Santa Monica, and exacerbated existing problems with our housing and homelessness crises. We need to set real goals for the future while staying extremely flexible in our approach in order to meet new challenges. Even in this protracted period of uncertainty, there are still signs of hope. Santa Monica is thankfully a unique destination where people want to visit, so we must be prepared to reopen as tourism comes back. I'm excited that this past weekend, hotel occupancy exceeded 70%. In addition, the state of California is providing more assistance for businesses that our restaurants, retailers, and other small businesses can take advantage of in the coming months. Housing is a human right, and our unhoused residents continue to struggle as even more people become housing insecure. Last night, we discussed prioritizing affordable residential housing at the city level to meet the needs of our homeless and low-income residents in the context of our housing element requirements. Exploring how to utilize government-owned property for homeless housing is a high priority and the best opportunity to provide stability for our unhoused community using a housing-first model. There is good news as well for renters struggling to pay rent and concerned about impending eviction. The passage of Assembly Bill 3088, along with federal and state stimulus money coming to Santa Monica for renter assistance, will allow small landlords to recoup a large percentage of back rent while preventing evictions for renters. I think Santa Monica educated phenom poet Amanda Gorman put it best. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. Before us, we see a location with glistening natural beauty, exceptional public and private schools, and a community college rivaled by few. We have 2 major hospitals, countless prestigious medical practices from pediatrics to holistic health to cancer research. We have world-class businesses in burgeoning sectors that choose to root themselves here, knowing they are part of the cutting edge and that their employees want to raise families here. We have the best parks and open space, streets, transportation, libraries, youth programs, and sustainability programs of any city in the county, and I think in the state. And we are blessed with an immensely committed and talented city workforce. We have a strong commitment to building and maintaining an economically diverse community, as reflected in our rent control and tenant protection laws and our 40-year commitment to deed-restricted affordable housing. We have an informed, active, engaged, and diverse group of resident community organizations. Just as we can only beat the pandemic together, we can only walk the road to recovery together. And I want to commend and thank the many volunteers in Santa Monica who have helped to bring our community together in challenging times. Those of us who were homebound watched as people picked up brooms and tools and helped to put the city back together in the days after the damage to property and businesses on May 31st, events for which the city apologizes once again to city businesses and residents. We have watched as our volunteers continue to deliver food for Meals on Wheels and participate in local food distribution events, help sign up seniors for vaccinations, help out at the Santa Monica Farmers Market and Santa Monica Animal Shelter. And we need more volunteers at both of those places. Share thoughts through the now active community priorities survey and at council meetings, serve on boards and commissions, including the Housing Commission, the Rent Board, Arts Commission, and many others. And soon we will see the Public Safety Reform and Oversight Commission and the We Are Santa Monica Fund Advisory Board. Well, government has the ability to point us in the direction we need to go. But for meaningful outcomes, we have to turn toward the common effort of advancing the common good. We do this as individuals by rebuilding our economy, our connections to one another, and our hearts. When we set aside our differences and care for ourselves, we can make progress in solving the regional tragedy of homelessness, access to affordable housing, and impending evictions. This is how we can talk about housing allocations and density and where to build and how much to build and how tall it can be. It's how we can redefine public safety, advance racial justice, and imagine the public spaces of the future. As young poet laureate Gorman wrote, it's as simple as a decision that each of us chooses to make to turn toward one another with compassion and open ear and a resolve to participate in solutions for a strong recovery. I know that to be a Santa Monican is to have fierce beliefs and to be a force for good. When I moved to Santa Monica in 1992, my husband Michael and I were drawn by our proximity to the beach and our neighborhood that was perfect for raising our 2 millennial daughters, Hillary and Molly, as well as an economically diverse and progressive city that comported with our values. We found community in the shared values of our neighbors, but was in my experience in 2013 advocating for the tenants of Village Trailer Park and the injustice I witnessed that led me to run for city council and led me to the position I hold today as mayor of this great city. I look to my colleagues on the city council and I see similar stories of love of place and conviction for good. 4 of your council members grew up here, and the remaining 3 of us have been here for decades. Kevin McEwen moved into his Santa Monica apartment 45 years ago to be general manager of KROQ. And as the last renter left on the council, he continues his passion for renters' rights and affordable housing. A fierce environmentalist, Kevin is more likely to be seen on his bike than in his Prius, especially since the pandemic. Glean Davis and her husband, John, came here in 1986 to start a family after law school. Glean is a very proud mother of a West Point graduate. Her passion for education and social services is what spawned her public service. She cares deeply about community well-being and ensuring future generations have access to housing and a car-free existence. Kristen McCowan was raised in the Pico neighborhood. When she left to build a career and work in the Obama administration, she carried Santa Monica close to her heart and waited for the right moment to return, to raise her 2 children with her husband. She is particularly invested in racial justice, economic recovery, and engaging working moms. Oscar De La Torre was born and raised in Santa Monica, where he and his wife Maria are raising their 2 sons. Oscar founded a youth center that continues to support local youth, and he served 18 years on our local board of education. Oscar has dedicated his life to supporting our most marginalized youth and their families. Christine Parra grew up spending summers roller skating on the 3rd Street Promenade, has been a Santa Monica resident for the past 23 years, raising her 3 sons with her husband, Jose. When she's not filling a role as council member, she works for a local fire department and emergency management. Phil Brock is a proud 2nd-generation lifelong Santa Monican who knows a thing or 2 about our local history. He's worked on a host of boards and commissions as a voice for local control, parks and the arts, and open space. When Phil's not volunteering or leading the Samo High Alumni Association, he loves his daily long walks through our city. So I think you can see every member of the council is here because you, the voters of Santa Monica, selected each of us to lead. We reflect the values of Santa Monica as the most diverse city council body in our history. We represent the dynamism across issues. We all work on your behalf, each fueled by a relentless love of Santa Monica. Now, I ask you to think back, take a moment, think back to your own Santa Monica origin story. And now I'm going to ask you to harness what brought you here and your deep love for Santa Monica as we look to this new day and this new moment, because at the end of the day, nowhere is better than right here. Before we can recover together, we need to heal ourselves. In this spirit, I hope you take this opportunity to get out for more walks, especially along the North Beach Trail. Spend more time with your pets or visit a new local dog park. Spend a few minutes each day taking a deep cleansing breath. Or like me, spend time on your balcony or backyard nurturing exquisite and vanishing monarch butterflies. This is in fact a brand new day when we can step out of the walls of our home and back into the bright sunlight of Santa Monica. And you too can say it's just another day in paradise. I enthusiastically join you in the common effort of recovery. We can do it one step at a time with respect in our hearts and full of love for the place we call home. And now I'm honored to introduce my friend Ted Lieu, who has represented Santa Monica and California's 33rd Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives since 2015. Ted was an officer in the U.S. Air Force and currently serves in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. In Congress, Ted has established himself as a leader on the environment, cybersecurity, civil liberties, government ethics, and veterans. He recently served as a House impeachment manager and has been an outspoken proponent for tackling climate change. Some of you may know him better as tweeting Ted. Representative Lieu is frequently sought out for his insight on technology and innovation, as well as a sharing creative economy. He has been a leader in Congress against ethnic and racial profiling and discrimination against the LGBTQIA community. Ted lives with his wife and boys in Torrance, where he started his public service on the city council in 2002. We are honored to have Representative Lieu, my friend, join us tonight. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sue Himmelrich, for that wonderful introduction. And I wanted to first of all say what a great job that you have done and your city council, especially during the challenging time of this pandemic. Please also say hi to your husband, Michael, as well. As some of you may know, I worked with Michael in the same law firm early in my career. I also want to give a shout out to Gleam Davis, who very kindly volunteered again at our Service Academy Day that we held this weekend, and she gave her insights about being a mom of West Point a student. In terms of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm going to talk about the American Rescue Plan, which is the COVID-19 stimulus package. Then I'm going to talk about some legislation I'm working on, and I'll conclude talking about homelessness. The American Rescue Plan is a $1.9 trillion COVID-19 stimulus package that the House of Representatives will pass this Friday. It will then go to the Senate, and the Senate will look at it and likely make some changes to it. We will then reconcile the two versions in the House and the Senate, and the intent is to get it to President Biden's desk before March 14th, before unemployment benefits run out. So I'll give you a few reasons why we need to pass this stimulus package. We have economists, both conservative and liberal, as well as nonpartisan officials, who all say we need this $1.9 trillion stimulus package. I'm going to tell you what Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said. He stated that I'm much more worried about falling short of a complete recovery and losing people's careers and lives that they built because they don't get back to work in time. I'm much more concerned about that and the damage that will do. I'm also more concerned about the possibility of losing jobs. I'm much more concerned about that than the possibility of higher inflation. Former Trump advisor Kevin Hassert, who supports this relief plan, stated, "There are so many businesses treading water, barely hanging on. Now they're getting hit by another shock from the pandemic. You could end up in a negative spiral for the economy if we don't pass this plan." And then our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, stated that economists don't always agree, but I think there is a consensus now that without further action, we risk a longer, more painful recession. The plan itself has a lot of different sections that help different folks across America. As many of you have heard, it will have $1,400 stimulus checks. In addition, it has a number of funds for cities, states, school districts. So I'm very pleased that the city of Santa Monica will be getting $27 million. That is an estimate, and certainly the Senate can still make some modifications, but the intent is to get Santa Monica millions of dollars of federal funds to help the city with the challenges during this pandemic. The Santa Monica Malibu School District will also get approximately $9.3 million. I'm sorry, the Santa Monica School District. Okay, in terms of other parts of this bill, it will provide a national vaccination program that will speed up the distribution of vaccines, including partnering with state and local governments and setting up community vaccination centers. This legislation will also provide funding to expand testing and contact tracing programs across the country. It will also extend and expand unemployment benefits. The plan will strengthen and expand federal nutrition programs. It will also provide funding for rental assistance and extend the eviction and foreclosure moratorium until September 30th, 2021. There's also funding in the American Rescue Plan for childcare. The American Rescue Plan will also ensure through COBRA, the ACA, and Medicaid, the opportunity for unemployed and low-income Americans to obtain access to affordable health care. This legislation also provides critical resources to save the jobs of first responders and frontline public health workers. And we also provide additional assistance to small businesses to help stores on main streets across the country. So this plan has really a lot of good parts in it to help American people, and specifically for California and local cities and jurisdictions like Santa Monica, as well as families and businesses. And I also want to give a shout out not only to the city of Santa Monica, but also to the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce for all you do to help businesses during this difficult time. Happy during the question and answer session to answer any questions about the American Rescue Plan. And now I'd like to talk to you about some legislation I'm working on that will impact Santa Monica that you might be interested in. My view is that we have to make sure that we help cities and counties engage in what's called subnational diplomacy. So Santa Monica already does this. It has a number of programs with foreign cities and with chambers of commerces and other jurisdictions. And when you have cultural exchanges or you have business delegations that come through the city of Santa Monica, all of that is a form of diplomacy, or sister city programs. All of that is diplomacy at what's called the subnational level. So my view is in the federal government, we can either ignore that or we can help it. And I think we should help that. So my bill, the City and State Diplomacy Act, will create an Office of Subnational Diplomacy within the United States State Department. And it would have State Department personnel go out and help the various cities and states who want this help and who are engaging in subnational diplomacy. This bill actually passed last term on a bipartisan basis. I'm co-leading it with Representative Joe Wilson, a Republican out of South Carolina. And we almost got it into law, except their former administration opposed it. Our view and our understanding is that the Biden administration does not oppose it. And so we're going to try again this term. And it's our hope we can get that signed into law and then start providing assistance to cities like Santa Monica who want to engage in subnational diplomacy. I'm also working on legislation related to facial recognition. I'm also a recovering computer science major. And so when you look at facial recognition, what you see is that there are some problems with how it identifies people's faces related to skin color. So the darker your complexion is, the less accurate facial recognition turns out to be. And when you then see these facial recognition programs deployed across America and by certain cities or law enforcement agencies, for example, it becomes a massive equal protection problem if you start having inaccurate facial recognition, especially for people of darker complexion. And so I'm working on legislation that's going to provide a set of criteria and rules for governmental agencies to follow if they're going to use and deploy facial recognition. So that's with my work on the Judiciary Committee. My first bill, the City and State Diplomacy Act, is on my work on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And then now I'd like to talk about homelessness. It is a problem and a challenge, not just for Santa Monica, but also for many jurisdictions in the state of California. The federal government has, in the past, had not that much to do with homelessness. And the part that it could help out with were veterans who were homeless. Now, with that part, it's done pretty well. So when you look at the spike of homelessness, you do see that veterans' homelessness has generally stayed the same or declined somewhat. And that's because the federal government has a very good program known as the HUD-VASH voucher program, where not only do we provide funds for housing, we also provide funds for services so that the person who is homeless can not only get a roof over their head, but also get services to start transitioning them back into society. But my view is just because the federal government hasn't helped out other parts of homelessness population doesn't mean we shouldn't. So I've worked with Senator Feinstein's office now, and we introduced legislation last term, and we're going to introduce it again this term. We're going to provide nearly $5 billion of funding over 4 years to local cities and jurisdictions to help them address the homelessness issue for the entire population. Hopefully we can get that into law this term because of the change in administration and the change of control in the U.S. Senate. So with that, I want to thank you again for inviting me. And let me finally conclude by telling you a little bit about my district office. During this pandemic, we have remained open. We are physically closed, but my staff works remotely, and we will help you if you run into problems with federal issues or federal agencies. So if you're not getting a Social Security check or a family member is not, for example, please contact us. We'll help you. If for whatever reason you need to travel out of the country and you realize your passport has expired or is about to expire, contact us. We will help you. If you're missing veterans benefits, contact us. We'll help you. So for anything related to a federal agency or federal benefit, please contact my office and we will assist you. So with that, thanks so much for having me here. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Congressman. This is Matt Stauffer, Executive Vice President of External Affairs at the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce. And thank you, Lane, and thank you, Sue, for participating in the Q&A. As you might imagine, we received a number of questions and comments in advance of this event, and I don't imagine we'll be able to get through nearly all of them. But I'm going to go ahead and give it my best shot and get through as many as we can. We've got a number of questions on a number of different topics. So please feel free to jump in. I will direct some questions towards some of you, but if anyone has anything to add, please don't hesitate to jump in. But I want to get started with probably the most immediate concern that's on folks' minds right now, which is COVID. And so I want to ask Lane, or I should say, Diana from the community wants to ask, will there be a vaccination site in Santa Monica to help our city's vaccination process?
Thanks, Matt, and thank you to Diana and to everybody who's with us tonight. We would love to see a vaccination site in Santa Monica. We, in partnership with SMC, have submitted a proposal to the county. It's all signed off on and ready to go, but as everyone knows, there's a supply problem right now. And so right now, as supply is not beyond the county and the state's capacity for healthcare providers and through their mass vaccination sites, they really are focused on the Forum, Dodger Stadium, and healthcare providers. If they move to cities, we do believe we will be one of them, and we'll continue to be in partnership with them because we would like to have that here in Santa Monica.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lane, and thank you, Diana, for the question. The next question is for the mayor. Sue. Kathleen asks, I'm concerned about the mental health of Santa Monica youth who were challenged even before COVID-19. What plans or programs will address this?
Thanks for that question, Kathleen. We have what amounts to 3 levels of provisions for young people in Santa Monica. The first is our Human Services Grants Program. And within that program, our partners who are social service providers and who work with the youth, work with our schools, work with our after-school programs are prepared to and have been doing outreach to our young people and their caretakers in order to make sure that they get the services they need. At the next level is our school district, which has counselors and other professionals on site and who again work with the city and with the families in order to help our young people. And finally, we have services at a county level provided by LA County. But I agree with you. You heard the story of my nephew. Mental health services are critical right now, and will become even more critical as we emerge from this pandemic and see its ultimate mental health effects. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. I want to go back to Lane. Rhoda from the community asks, when will we be able to open our libraries and cultural centers?
Yes, thank you to Rhoda for the question. We would really like to have our libraries open as soon as possible. I want to start with what we're doing with our Santa Monica Public Library services and make sure that everybody knows we do have curbside services at the downtown location and Montana and Pico branch. And in all of those locations, we are doing everything we can to expand services and to meet community needs. So starting in mid-March, you will see those hours on Wednesday adjusted to stay open until 7 p.m. in response to some of the requests we've received from the community. And we do have good news coming in that we have received a grant to expand access for the community at the Ocean Park branch through an Open Plus model that will offer limited self-service to our residents at our oldest Carnegie Library. Beyond that, where we are in our budget process, we are at this point in the city looking very carefully both at public health requirements and how they are lifting or going up and down, as well as at our city budget. And so with the city's constrained budget resources, the City Council will begin its process of considering its priorities at a City Council meeting Saturday, March 13th at 1:30 p.m. And we do encourage the community to join us for that. As we look at resources with things like libraries, one of the things you'll hear repeatedly from us is that we are committed to providing services to the community. When we talk about opening facilities, we encounter both public health issues as well as the need to look at all of the people who actually help the library facility to open up and be available. And we also want to be sure that with all our indoor spaces, if we need to be responsive to schools reopening, that we prioritize that as well. So we are working really around the clock to try to expand community services in a very changed environment.
Excellent. Shifting gears a bit, obviously the virus has been top of mind on everybody, but its impact on the economy has also been a point of concern for the whole community. So I want to go back to Congressman Lieu. You gave us a great overview of the relief package that's in play in Washington, D.C. And I think Gary from the community would just ask if you could expand on that a little bit. He asks, what industries are we targeting for new business, specifically to ensure that we have a diverse portfolio of businesses and industries in our local economy?
Thank you for that question from Gary. The Paycheck Protection Loan funding and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan funding is not industry specific. It's mostly targeted at small and medium-sized businesses. Anyone who has any problems accessing those loans, again, please contact my office and we will help you. But the larger question is something that we've been asking even before this pandemic, which is how do you make sure we have a sustainable economy going forward? And my view is we're not going to succeed in Santa Monica or in California making socks. Our land value is too expensive, our cost of labor is too high. So it's going to be in those areas where we have a competitive advantage. And if you look at Southern California, if you look at America, there are certain industries that we do well in and do better than other states and other countries. So one of them, for example, is the aerospace industry. It's not that easy to have a military base surrounded by aerospace companies with a lot of subcontractors throughout the area. And that's what the Space and Missile Systems Center in El Segundo brings with all of its contracts that it does in terms of helping Southern California. It is a pretty big economic impact. And I'm very pleased that with now the advent of the United States Space Force, Los Angeles Air Force Base will be designated a Space Force base. And it's also in the running to become the headquarters for Systems Command under Space Force. And I'm lobbying to try and make that happen with Republican Ken Calvert. We started the California Aerospace Caucus to help that. Another area where we have a competitive advantage, particularly in Santa Monica, is tourism, right? You can't export the 3rd Street Promenade. You can't outsource the Santa Monica Boardwalk. And tourism, especially once the pandemic dies down, is going to be a driver and continue to be a driver of the economy in Santa Monica as well as in Southern California. It is one reason that the COVID relief packages did have funding also for airlines as well as airports, because there is something that happens if you don't let pilots fly planes or flight attendants be on these planes, then they lose their certification to be on a plane. Then it takes another 6 months of training and a whole bunch of other red tape happens. And so that's why you have to keep these planes in the air and keep these routes going. And also for tourism reasons, we need to have the airlines ready to go when the pandemic starts to die down.
Well, thanks, Congressman. I think that's a great segue to our next question from Cynthia. And I think both you and the city manager can chime in here. And Lane, I'll give you the first crack at it, specifically on how are we supporting small businesses? You mentioned the fund, but what else is the city doing, or has the city been doing to support our small businesses? And again, this one comes from Cynthia.
Yes, thank you to Cynthia for the question. And we have been working throughout the pandemic. So our economic development, our economic recovery task force, which is a team of city staff, we've pulled staff from essentially every department to be working every single day focused on Santa Monica's economic recovery. And what that's meant is we've opened more and more of our outdoor space to outdoor dining and fitness. And that really has shown Santa Monica's strengths. So we want to play to our strengths, and we want to allow our small businesses to rely on those strengths. So we have tried to work individually with businesses in addition to Main Street and other things, really reaching out and in hand, trying to find ways for businesses to get outside. The other thing we've been doing is distributing through our EOC team and partners information about public health requirements and also information about federal, state, and county aid packages and aid that's available for our small businesses. Our Santa Monica Shines program that you heard about earlier was meant to be an accessible and low-cost way to show the community that a business was safe and ready to operate. And so that was a key partnership to us, both to communicate to a larger group that Santa Monica is a safe place to come, and also to communicate for local businesses that they have gone through certain steps to provide a safe experience for their customers. We are really excited about the SAMO Small Business Recovery Grants Program. As we looked at the landscape of aid and our city budget and how much the decline in tourism has impacted our city budget, we simply don't have large pots of money. But what we did here is that even small amounts of money for our most local businesses could help. And that's why we've partnered with the Chamber Foundation, and we're reaching out to our larger businesses to see if they can help through the We Are Santa Monica Fund to provide smaller targeted loans to our smallest and most local businesses. And we appreciate the support of Congressman Lieu throughout the pandemic and trying to find aid in the many different areas in which our community has needed it.
Fantastic, thank you. Shifting gears again, this is probably the most frequent topic that we heard about from the community in advance of this event, and it's no secret why. So I want to turn to housing and homelessness, and I want to turn to Congressman Lieu and the mayor, and I'll ask you both. Congressman, you touched on this already about federal funding, but I want to ask you both, and I guess I'll start with Sue. What are we doing about homelessness, and what can we do? Megan asks, what are we doing, and points out that it's a county, regional, and statewide problem, but she seems to think that it's getting worse. So what are we doing about homelessness?
Well, for anyone who watched our council meeting last night, we were there till 1 a.m. or close to 1 a.m. discussing, among other things, how to approach what is a very intractable problem going forward. We know that this is an issue. And if you heard us last night, you know that we live here as you live here. Many of us work here as you work here, and we understand that this is a human tragedy. It's a human tragedy for Santa Monica, for California, for the country, and indeed, it's a worldwide problem. Last night, we embraced the 4 pillars of our homelessness program, which include, first, preventing people from becoming homeless. And we in Santa Monica have done rent subsidies before the pandemic. We have a program called Preserve Our Diversity that our city manager mentioned. That program actually makes sure that seniors who are in rent-controlled housing and making very little money, often on fixed incomes, won't be eating dog food at the end of the month. And that keeps people from being on the streets. We also have a strategy that has been incredibly successful, according to a RAND study in 2019 of homeless outreach teams, to deal with our most chronic homeless. But this problem is so huge. And look, it takes more money than any of us have. The estimate is that to build the affordable housing included in our housing element that might help us put our folks who are unsheltered in the streets and suffering into housing, it would cost $5 billion in Santa Monica, our 8.3 square miles alone. This is a problem that requires a collective effort on the part of the state and the federal government, as well as our city and the county.
So, Congressman, I heard the federal government mentioned there. Is there anything else that you can add on to what the mayor just said about what can be done about homelessness?
Sure. Thank you. About 2 years ago, I was at a meeting on homelessness. And if you remember at that time, the economy was doing relatively well. California had recently become the 5th largest economy in the world again. And people were wondering, well, how come we saw an increase in homelessness? And this was pre-pandemic. And it turned out when you looked at data, this interesting thing started happening where, because the economy was doing relatively well in California, people would come in and they would get jobs that had higher wages, and then housing prices started to rise. And you saw this displacement happening where all of a sudden those folks who were at the lower end of the housing market started getting displaced. And when the rental rates started going up, they would fall off and then they would become homeless. And you had an increase in the number of people who were homeless and were still working. So at some level, you just have to increase wages. You also have to try to reduce the price of housing. Those are difficult issues. It's one reason that I'm supporting the $15 minimum wage increase in the American Rescue Plan in the House version, because I believe, even though California has it, that will only raise wages in other states, which only start raising wages in California as well, above $15. And you do have a problem also with the high cost of housing. And so that's part of the problem. Then you do have issues related to providing services to people who are homeless and getting the funding for that. And that's why Senator Feinstein and I introduced our legislation to give cities and jurisdictions money to provide services to those who are homeless.
I'm going to stay with you, Congressman, because I think you're segueing nicely into the next question, which comes from Josh. And Josh wants to know, and Mayor, I'm going to turn to you on this as well, but Congressman, Josh wants to know how Santa Monica can increase its production of middle-income housing, which is affordable to households earning between 80 and 120% of the area median income.
That's a great question. So one of the challenges of being in Congress is that most members of Congress are not from places like Santa Monica. And when I tell them housing prices, they think I'm joking, because most people don't experience the kind of housing prices we have here. or the rental prices we have here in Southern California, as well as in Santa Monica. It's a very difficult issue. A lot of it is state and county and city related. There's not really a heck of a lot that the federal government could do. Federal government, for example, doesn't get involved in rent control. We don't, really get involved in local property development decisions. So what we could do is try to make it, for example, easier for people to try to get home loans. We can try to provide rental assistance funds during crises like this pandemic. And so we are trying to do that, but a lot of this is done at the local level or state level.
Thank you. And Mayor, same question. Again, Josh asks how Santa Monica can increase middle income housing.
So first of all, I do want to thank Ted for the tremendous help he's been on our housing issues, including a trip we took a few years ago to Washington to increase the payment standard for Section 8 vouchers. And Ted set us up for that meeting with HUD that ultimately resulted in an elevation of our Section 8 housing standards. But this is a problem that's recognized by the state. HCD came out with a report a few days ago. We are 1.5 million units short of having enough housing for people who make below 120% of area median income. I think I know Josh, and I think Josh was involved in a meeting that that I was in with a lot of city staff about this 80 to 120% problem, which isn't covered by vouchers, et cetera. And there are people who are successfully building 80 to 120% of AMI housing with no government subsidies, no tax credits, no nothing, because they're building housing for people who don't qualify for it. I was very impressed. I think that there are pathways forward. I think that that the market has, in a way, created it. I've seen it with my own children who live 3 in a 1-bedroom apartment. But I think there's a better way to do it, and I think people have invented it. I think we'll be seeing it very soon.
Great. So I'll do we're getting close to time, I know. I have one more question on housing, and it comes from David. And again, I'll address it to both the congressman and the mayor. David asks, the city urgently needs more housing. How can we turn back the tide against NIMBYs and make Santa Monica affordable for people? So, Congressman, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah, happy to answer that question. Even though Sue Himmelrich said that she would answer all the hard questions.
I did. I'm sorry, Ted.
So last term, I co-authored legislation that will provide federal incentives to housing that was built near transportation hubs and transportation centers. So Santa Monica is actually a city that has, various transportation hubs and transportation centers, and we'll work on this legislation again. Mostly what you'll see at the federal level are trying to get incentives for people to build more housing or certain kinds of tax credits. You're not really going to see any sorts of mandates coming out of federal government regarding housing at this point in time.
And
so,
Sue, yeah, same question, please.
Yeah. So, look, we have an affordable housing crisis in Santa Monica, not a housing crisis. In fact, I understand that at our latest meetings about the housing element in the production group, we have only 890 units of market rate left to build in the next 8 years, but we still have thousands of affordable units. And this is under the RENA calculation that gave gave us basically 9,000 units, 6,000 of them affordable. So of the 3,000 units that were market rate, we're already 2/3 of the way there. So I just want to note for the record that our housing crisis in Santa Monica, as in many large coastal cities with great economies in California, is not a housing crisis. It is an affordable housing crisis.
Well, thank you both for that. I see it is 6:57, so I want to thank the Congressman, Mayor Himmelrich, and City Manager Lane Dilg for sticking around for the Q&A. And I want to toss it back to Laurel, our Chamber President, to close out the program.
Thank you, Matt. Really appreciate the fact that we have such wonderful people with us tonight and such a large audience. We're glad you joined us. I want to first thank our interim city manager, Lane Dilg, for being with us, our mayor, Sue Himmelrich, and Congressman, we so appreciate you had the time to join us tonight, Congressman Ted Lieu. We really appreciate your time. I hope everyone was able to really find a lot of different ways to walk away feeling informed. I also want to give another great big thank you to our sponsors who have made this event possible tonight and have invited you all as our guests. We have, I think we're at almost about 1,000 people are here at this point. And then I want to thank all of you, our community who with us all together, we have to find a way to walk this road of recovery. And I just want to say that I hope you have a good night. I'm glad you joined us, and we hope to see you in our community walking around and meeting sooner than later in all our different businesses and on the streets and in our parks. Good night, everybody.